that. But what I find, the best definition that I find is the definition on the right side in the middle. That is anything that is new, useful, and surprising. So useful, of course, is obvious. Something that is novel also is obvious. But all of us have this somewhere in our minds that there should be some aha moment associated with it. It should not be something that is obvious. And because it's not obvious, it's surprising. There are other definitions. Some people just call it as an idea which is useful. Innovation is staying relevant. That is the importance of innovation. So let's move on. I mean, you'll find plenty of them. So I'm going to spend a bit of time on this slide to give you examples of what is. Okay, let me maybe start with this. There are three types of broad categories of innovation. One is product innovation, which people sort of think, most of us think as innovation, that is coming up with some cool artifact or product or something. That's sort of an innovator's dream, if you will, right? I mean, the stage from invention to innovation, somewhere this falls in that category. Process innovation. If you have processes which can be changed and which can lead to effective conducting business effectively and delivering benefits either in the sales or in manufacturing distribution, that's process innovation. The third one is business model innovation, and we have been seeing a lot of this over the last maybe few years, maybe a decade, all over the world, including India. So, business models such as Uber, Ola, then also business models of selling data, selling services. These are different. These are a variety of business models which were not in existence earlier. And I think the proliferation of internet technologies, combined with maybe people thinking globally and thinking broadly, fall into this category. Airbnb is another example. So let me give you some examples that I personally liked. So top left, you see a tire that is on a military vehicle. It's a airless tire. So why is it airless? Because obviously in a tough terrain, it's difficult to find a place to fill air into a tire. And the tire is kind of structured in a honeycomb type of way. So it's tough, it is flexible at the same time, and does not need any maintenance, does not need air to be filled. And this is designed at one of the labs in the US, I think military labs. Right, so I found it pretty cool. Second one you see on the right is a mirror in which a person trying out clothes. It's a digital mirror. So you try out a garment and you see an image of yourself using that garment in the mirror. So it's actually taking a picture and sort of showing to you, or superimposing a picture of a garment on you, right? So it's not like you have to try all garments, but you will essentially, you can just select a garment and then try it out, and the mirror will show you what it is. One on the right is an X-ray machine, which is, I think it was a good innovation. Maybe it's become so common that we don't maybe think of it as an innovation. The gun. I think in the older days, I'm sure when people used to fight with swords and then maybe bow and arrow, I'm sure this was a leap forward. Someone thought about packing powder and then exploding that powder and pushing a bullet out, right? I mean, that must have been quite a change, a big jump. In fact, there are people who believe that the Europeans were able to conquer the world where the world did not have guns. I mean, had India and the kings and the rulers at that time had guns, maybe the history could have been completely different. We don't know. Another example is a shuttlecock. I mean, I think it's a nice design. It's not like any sport that you see. Most sports use a ball, spherical object to be tossed around, hit or thrown, whatever. But the shuttlecock has a curious sort of design. I mean, it has a weight at the bottom, so that when the shuttle falls down from the air, it always comes down with the cork at the bottom and the feathers upward. And then it can fly, of course, and because of the feathers, I think it cannot go an infinite distance. It cannot go a very long distance. So it's ideally suited for an indoor game. A tennis ball, if you hit it hard, it can really go, I mean, not miles, but maybe it can go half a kilometer. So this I felt was a very interesting example of an innovation. So these are product innovations. Let's talk a bit about my favorite process business model innovation. I don't know if any of you have heard of this. It's called a hole-in-one insurance. Has anybody heard of this?
No, Professor.
No, Professor.
No.
Okay, so someone came up with this idea of a cool business model. What they did was it was called celebrity golf. So they arranged a golf tournament, not really a full-fledged golf tournament, but you get to hit the golf ball one shot. And in one shot, you need to putt the ball in the hole, right? And they put a entry fee of something like maybe $10,000 for $1,000 or something like that for each celebrity. And they said, if you put the ball in the hole in one shot, you will get a Ferrari, $1 million car. And what they did was to generate some revenue. They brought in the revenue model was obviously just getting a lot of spectators to watch this grand event. So from the spectators, they charge money. From the celebrities, they charge money. But then that money was not enough to make profits if a celebrity managed to putt the ball in the hole in one shot, then giving out $1 million is a big risk. The revenue they were collecting was not enough to cover that. And of course, they wanted to make profits. So they insured the hole. So they brought in an insurance company and they said that if in the event that there is a putt in one shot, then you will pay us the $1 million, right? You will insure the hole. So that became a big hit. And it was a very cool, nicely crafted innovation. So caught my eye. I think after that, it has been many have done it. Many have practiced that. And I think this happened about, in fact, 20 years back, maybe, at least 15 years back. So then the other examples of business processes, as I mentioned, are Uber, Ola, other related models like that. There are B2B, B2C business models. Process innovation. So Ford, maybe the picture is not very clear, but there is an assembly line, and instead of cars being transported, cars that are getting assembled, instead of those getting assembled, moving from one assembly line to another, the assembly line would go from one place to another. So this was sort of it's almost like a doctor's clinic in a van, right? So doctor in a van, and they come and visit the patients. So that was a different process they followed for their reasons they found, relevant. Instead of moving a lot of material around, move the machines, right? And that was, I think, was a cool idea. And then the other process innovation that Zara does is they have taken a very different approach in terms of managing the supply chain. They make where they sell. In a sense that if there are stores in India, they manufacture the garments in India itself. If there are stores in Spain, then they will get the garments made in Spain, right? So they find that easier. The fabric maybe is closer to what people are used to. The cost of shipping, cost of storing goods is less, and the whole system works more effectively and efficiently for them. So these are some examples of innovations. If you look at what are formerly known as great innovating companies, there are various surveys done, and just like you will find different universities being ranked in the top 10 depending on who has done the survey, who has done the evaluation, you will find different different companies in this list, top 50 or top 20. But these are some noteworthy ones. The ones we know are, of course, Google, Amazon, Apple. We know Netflix kind of brought in a revolution in the way movies were delivered, entertainment is delivered. Tesla, you see there on the left side at the bottom. Of course, very innovative in the way they have built this car. The most well-known company that is known for innovation for decades is 3M. So in fact, 3M's philosophy is that innovation is the only way to do business and only way to survive. The only way to succeed is to innovate. So they are perhaps the most well-known example in the world, certainly in America, of being an innovation company with innovation at its heart. Other companies, of course, have been doing innovation in, I mean, they all innovate, they have to innovate to stay relevant. And that is the situation today. So companies are forced to give up their old ways of doing things, give up their old revenue models, business models, manufacturing methods, and ways of doing design, right? Why is McDonald's there in that list? Any guess?
Their process innovation, Professor.
Yeah, that is one. The other is
Drive-through.
Sorry?
Drive-through.
Drive-through, yes. The third one is their
Franchising model.
toys. The McDonald's toys also considered an innovative business model where they have tried to attract who actually will influence if a family will go to McDonald's or not, and that is the kids. So when they sell these toys and every time they keep changing the McDonald's toys, many children go through that phase where they say, okay, the new one has come, new toy has come, I want to go there. And that brings the family there and then they eat there. So these are some sort of nice ideas companies have implemented. So we talked about some examples. Now let's look at some formal sort of structure and theory. Can't really call it theory, but somewhere along those lines of how innovation, different types of innovation is viewed. So you have two axes. One is the problem and the solution axis, and the other axis is the market. So when you come up with a new concept, completely new concept and a completely new market, right? That is an innovation in itself. But if you're serving a market that is already there, existing market, and you provide something that is new, novel, that can also be innovative. So there are four categories. When the problem is well defined, we have had in the history innovations such as breakthrough innovations such as antibiotics, the Xerox machine. So people wanted to copy. People, I'm sure, would have wanted to make copies of what is written on a piece of paper. But the Xerox machine, when it was made, was certainly a breakthrough in that breakthrough technology. Now, at the bottom left, what you see is basic research. So what does basic research mean is there is actually no end goal that people are working on. They're simply experimenting with things, trying to build certain things together. They will try a few things, throw them out if they don't work, if they don't give any positive results. But this is not targeted innovation. So it's not targeted at saying that I have a problem that is well defined and I'm trying to solve it. So neither do the researchers most often, neither do they have a problem defined, nor do they have a target market in mind. So it's kind of the people who are curious and, many times, in fact, children come up with some cool things because they don't have any of these things in mind. They're simply curious and trying, and they are actually experimenting with things, right? Then there are some innovations which are disruptive. So disruptive in the sense that the problems have been undefined, they didn't exist, but the market has been there. right? And so Maggie is one such example. When Maggie was launched in India, uh, it was uh, it was a completely new thing. I don't think any of us, at least I was there when it started in India, and nothing of that sort existed. But they launched this quick snack, and it suited both. It suited the children as well as maybe people who made the Maggie, maybe mothers at that time mostly, who made that in 2 3 minutes, and that would become a, like a power up snack for children. So it was really quick to make, as opposed to making maybe making pakoras or making sandwiches, etc. So it made both people very happy, and became a big hit, as all of us know. Sustaining innovations is the last category. That is, you have a market that exists, you have problems which exist, problems which have been existed, which have existed. Then what happens is these are incremental, but of course, you can call it incremental innovation also, like a hybrid car. People had experimented with electric cars. People, of course, have had petrol cars, but then not satisfied with either, coming up with something like a hybrid car. A smartphone, you can say, is a the market always existed for people being able to type more effectively, using a computer-like thing in your hand, right? And that is what led to this whole app business, because otherwise on your computer you would type a lot. So they took away the keyboard quite a bit, and just simply using clicks, and you know what the smartphone is all about. So that was nothing. It wasn't something which say that the phones with keyboards did not provide, like Nokia had keyboard phones, BlackBerry had keyboard phones, but they gave the improvement over that. Right? Okay, so what are some things that top innovating companies do to be in that category of being great innovating companies? So the way they structure their organizations and the way they run the company and the company culture is maintained is different. In most successful innovating companies, these things are different. So 3M, the most famous, if you look up 3M, you will find the word innovation right next to it. 15% innovation time rule. That is, everyone is given 15% time free to go and tinker with and play with your ideas, you try out new things, etc. The second rule that they have is mandatory to generate X% of total revenue from new products. So imagine the era when Ambassador and Fiat were there in India, and excuse me, at that time, would no such mandate existed, right? Obviously, because there was a market, there was a steady market. Maybe it grew at 1% a year or something like that, and they sold the same model maybe for 2 decades, right? Same car, same model for a couple of decades. Exactly opposite of what 3M says is that every year the revenue must come, X% of revenue must come from new launches. So that leads naturally drives back innovation in the company. So Apple has a different way of doing things. They believe in this no governance of innovation. So they don't want to structure, they don't want to monitor, they don't want to police who is doing innovation, who is not. They simply let people sort of loose and say, okay, we will maybe facilitate some of it by having these left brain, right brain meetings to develop ideas. That is, one set of meetings is to be very creative, free thinking in the ideas. The other set of meetings is to look at the practical aspects of new ideas and what bottlenecks you may hit, how you will overcome those bottlenecks, etc. So the practical aspect of taking those ideas to market. So that's about the only governance or facilitation that they do. And then they have this sort of policy which most companies follow. That is, for every 10 ideas generated, they build 3 prototypes and one actually results in a product. Right? Google also, similar to 3M, provides free time for ideation and creating new products and features. Right? So the renowned old philosophies, why a lot of old, established, and very well-to-do companies failed, is they got into this mentality in the 60s and 70s maybe, that if it's not here, it's not anywhere. That is, we know especially automobile companies. They believe that we know what it takes to build a car. And then over a period of time in their research and development labs, they developed these demigods who felt that they know everything there is to know about a car and the design of a car. And they lived in that cocoon. They lived in that cocoon thinking that they are gods. And then someday it actually started not so much with innovation shocks, but it started with quality shocks given by the Japanese companies. And they really had a bad run after that. I mean, they really sort of collapsed. Had they been more innovative, the Japanese companies, of course, have been great in keeping quality standards very high, but perhaps not very innovative in new car designs, etc. Had the American companies been innovating, had they kept innovating, maybe they would have taken the high quality factor out of the business game, perhaps, right? We don't know. Okay. So now we will get into some things which are, what happens inside a company that wants to embrace innovation, as in they have come to a realization that innovation is a key. We need to innovate as a company if we want to even be relevant. And so this is sort of like saying change is the only new constant. And if you don't change, then you are going to die. So if you maintain status quo, you are actually going to sink. So we will get into what happens inside those companies and how they are trying to actually scale up and meet these challenges. Any questions at this point?
No.
No, Professor.
Okay, if there are no questions at this point, let's move forward. So what are the typical so imagine a company. I mean, I worked for IBM where we had a formal innovation program, and I will share with you some of the challenges that I was running that program. I will share with you the challenges that myself and the head of the IBM labs together we faced. So cultural issues, which include what? Which include the fact that salespeople are typically used to selling whatever has been selling regularly. So there is a value there is a clash of interest, as in the metrics are not very often set up to foster innovation. And let's try to understand this in a little detail. So sales guys are given targets to sell to meet numbers, but very few companies like 3M have almost no company will have a policy where they will say that sales guys have to sell new stuff X%, right? And if they push that too much, if the company pushes that too much, sales guys are not able to meet their targets, and then they will run away. They will leave the company. So it's a delicate balance the company actually has to hit. So that is one sort of a cultural issue. The other cultural issue is, like I mentioned in the case of automobile companies, there are quote unquote technical gurus, leaders, people who are known as great engineers in the company. And they are set in their ways. So it is often said that knowledge is an impediment to innovation, right? And that is actually true. So they come in the way of new ideas, new ways of doing business, actually taking shape and actually reaching the customer in old school type of companies. The reason Apple, Google, all these companies are able to innovate rapidly, of course, one, they are in the digital space and not in the heavy manufacturing or equipment space. But they also are very nimble in their thinking. They're also very free. Egos are not pampered. You may be senior or you may be 20 years old. If you come up with something that the company sees potential in, then you will get a fast track ticket to get that productized. So these are cultural issues where older senior people actually dominate in companies which are maybe like I don't want to name specific ones, but I think they're obvious. The large manufacturing companies which have been there maybe 100 years or so, and the legacy is a big challenge, right? The second one, the other one is lack of budget, maybe lack of vision. Budget, I think people have started to release, but what comes with budget is actually the interest of, if you look at the lowermost or fourth lower bar, lack of executive support. What is happening today in a lot of companies, if you go there, and I have friends who have been innovation leaders in companies as well, and in the innovation forums, common thing that comes across is fair number of young people come up with new ideas. They want to make something out of those ideas. They're very enthusiastic, but they it is left to those individuals, unfortunately, to take those ideas all the way to success, which means sell the idea internally, get funding for it, get the resources, get a trial lab, all those things, and then get the support to sell outside. So it becomes a huge and daunting challenge for the innovator himself or herself. So executive support is very, very critical. But many times what happens is every executive has his or her own priorities, and they are chasing those day-to-day priorities, right? Uh, they are not looking at how can the company benefit 3 years down the road, because the reality is that if they don't do whatever they are doing well for the next 6 months, they may not be around after 3 months, and that's a very natural thinking. So there is a natural conflict of interest, and that can only be handled. That conflict of interest can only be handled by the CXO level people who have a commitment to the company, potentially most likely for a 5-year kind of a time frame. So innovation in large existing corporates does not take place in a 6 months or 9-month time frame. For any idea to actually hit the market, on an average takes 18 to 24 months. This has been my experience, and many others also have echoed that. Uh, so I think these are some of the challenges that companies face. Now let's just touch upon a little bit about startups versus corporate. Why are startups so successful many times and generate spectacular amounts of money? Of course, there are many startups that fail, but the ones that are spectacular, what actually happens there is that they don't have any organizational or bureaucratic bottlenecks. That's one thing that is positive for them. They can be very quick in their decision making and strategy change. If something doesn't work, if you fail, changing that is very quick for them. The control of ideas is usually with the founders. So if I contrast companies like IBM or any of the other large IT companies with the companies which are pure product play companies like Google, Apple, Microsoft, etc. Why they're able to innovate is the business owner, mostly the person who's driving a product, he himself or she herself is actually comes from that background of being technically very good and being an innovator at some point in their career. Right? So that makes it, they are passionate about what they're building. They know exactly what they're building. Oracle is one company where it is sort of known that Larry Ellison's behavior outside the company and maybe even inside is not known to be very nice. But what anyone who worked at Oracle told that would say that for 20 years almost, he would know every feature that would go into the Oracle database. So that is what drove that company to be successful year on year. The interest, so he did not sort of become this owner mentality and said that, well, somebody else is going to run my company and someone else will do the design, right? So he would personally approve every feature that went into it, right? So that if you compare with some of the Indian business houses, large business houses especially, there are layers of management, and then somewhere below them are people who are technically sound, technically good. So it's a cultural difference, right? And this is why startups are able to succeed. What factors govern? Now we have seen the challenges. So what governs success in a corporation? right? Great ideas, of course, but that is the beginning of it. Innovator passion, belief, and an open mind is important. Sometimes innovators fall too deeply in love with their own ideas, and that often is their undoing. The innovators need to have an open mind, willingness to fail and improve continuously. Teamwork. So where does the teamwork come in? There are individuals who come up with good ideas in a company. They try to build something new, but they do need to collaborate. Sometimes they become very possessive and also protective of their ideas, and that doesn't actually work. They need to include, if person is an innovator, wants to build something new, that person needs to include other people. While you may be the primary innovator, primary inventor, whatever you call it, you do need to take the support of other individuals in the company, right? And of course, management support. So where does the management support come in? Networking. One important thing is networking within the organization, convincing sales, getting the product in front of customers very quickly, even if it is not a fully baked market ready product, right? So the financial support for doing that, because it is a long cycle usually of taking an idea to market, the management support is very key, and it needs to be in a continuous manner throughout that journey. So this is a typical cycle of innovation. It starts with ideation, create a prototype, validate that prototype with customer. Now, when we say with customers, it is not just with any customer, but every company will have some trusted customers who are happy to act as their partners. So what does this mean? Happy to act as their partners means that they want to experiment. These are companies that like to adopt new technologies, and they understand that new technology will not be very mature when it comes to them. So they are willing to partner with the provider company in the journey of innovation by being, say, okay, alpha or beta customers. So they will try out the products, they will provide feedback, not foul mouth the company and say that, hey, you guys wasted our time, we tried your products. They know that this is a journey, and they will get benefits out of it, maybe through some freebies, or maybe by getting the products at discounted rates for a continued period of time, etc. Right? So companies usually partner with some known trusted customers. It's usually, in software terminology, it's called, maybe you're doing a private beta launch, etc. And then you launch the real product, and then sell the product, scale, and gather feedback, and then the cycle sort of continues, right? So what you will find today is, several companies are adopting one of the following two models. That is, one model is in front of you. That is, you run either an ideation or a ideation contest or a hackathon, and you essentially run something like a funnel for innovation, left to right. Right? So you generate a bunch of ideas, maybe 100 ideas in a contest. Maybe it's a weekend contest, and there is a set of internal jury appointed for evaluation of those ideas. And some ideas get selected, and then they provide a little bit of help to provide a bit of help to prototype those ideas. So that prototyping many times will require time, of course, to be given free to the innovators, the people who came up with those ideas, and some funding, right? I mean, some investment. And that will lead to building of a set of minimum viable products. What is a minimum viable product? Something that is functional, but not completely ready, not maybe quality tested for a market launch, right? The next step of that is, like I said, the customer validation, right? So this is one path you can take. And then of course the product launch and scaling, the one path. The other is, some companies actually have a lab for innovation. That is, they have a setup where employees can go, and it's sort of like saying, okay, Friday is off for everyone or half the people. They go there, there is a lab, there is an R&D setup where you go and play around with things, right? And individuals come up with their POCs, then there are internal evaluations through maybe formal committees and technical leaders, and those become innovation projects, right? So the one source is a uh, mass feed kind of approach. That is, take 100 ideas over a weekend and evaluate them and take some of those ideas forward. And as you go forward, yes, of course, the ideas will continue to drop because they will not meet certain requirements. The other, of course, is the funded project. That is, there are those projects many times are initiated as maybe challenges given by technical leaders, or maybe innovators go, and some people who have good ideas, they go up to technical leaders or engineers, chief engineers, and give some proposals, and they validate those proposals and accept them as projects. In that case, you're not looking at a sort of a spray and pray approach, but rather you're looking at a very pointed approach for innovation, right? So these are two approaches companies typically employ in building a pipeline, building a set of projects which can lead to productization. And this is the state. This, I would say, maybe is the state of the art or state of innovation programs in a lot of large companies today. Companies like Bosch, companies like IBM, you will find them to be in pretty much the similar state, pretty much a similar situation, right? There is a directive from the top to innovate. There is a bit of reluctance from maybe divisional heads, etc., to spend time, spend money, because they have their regular day jobs and they have their regular KRAs to answer to. But these programs are being run. Now, let's look at an organization structure, that one example org structure that companies are using. So sometimes are called CIO or CINO, Chief Innovation Officers. They directly report to the CEO. So the head of R&D, head of production, marketing, etc., they all report to the CEO. But the Chief Innovation Officer has a direct reporting. Now, what is the role that the Chief Innovation Officer play? He actually has a curious sort of a role because doesn't usually have a staff reporting to him or her, right? Doesn't have a team, but has a virtual sort of team of people who are interested in taking part, contributing to innovation in the company in various divisions within the company, right? So if you take maybe a simple example in an automobile company, maybe there are people who work in the engine department, other people who work, perhaps in the suspension and car body, etc. In every department, there may be people who, with ideas they want to contribute to improve the product. The chief innovation officer is expected to have the intelligence, have the connect in the company to bring forward these ideas, facilitate the bringing forward of these ideas, right? So that's one important job, that is to motivate innovators. Secondly, the chief innovation officer will always get questioned on why are we investing in this project, and what is the outcome, what is the revenue that will come out of it. And selecting a good idea is actually many times a calculated gamble, because there are once the buzzword of innovation gets out in the company that we must innovate and etc., not everyone, I mean, every department wants to show that they are innovating, and they get into a lot of activity. They create a lot in the hackathon. There will be maybe 100 or 200 ideas contributed, maybe 100 POCs done. So picking out the right potential killer ideas is very difficult, and for that, the chief innovation officer is expected to have very good knowledge of the company, is expected to have good long-term commitment to the company, because otherwise it is very easy for people to just do a song and dance of saying that we got 100 ideas, we selected 10, we are going to productize 5 of them, and let's see what happens 2 years down the road. And 2 years down the road, what happens? what happens is the following. Most people involved in this whole exercise have moved. So they go away. The people, division heads who backed ideas, they have moved to some different roles. The innovators have left the companies, gone somewhere else. And you neither have knowledge, deep knowledge of the project, nor have the people around. And also the sales guys don't know what to do with it. So this can happen several times. So it's a very difficult situation that companies that have not inculcated the culture of innovation so far, they are finding themselves in a very difficult spot today. So there are lots of innovation consultants that have mushroomed. They go and provide advice, but where the rubber meets the road, I have heard myself, experienced myself, is the fact that the challenge that when the innovation is actually getting mature, many times you don't find the original sponsors around. Many times you don't find the original thinkers around, right? And why does that happen? In my view, this is my personal view, is that the goals and the rewards are not matched. The reward system is not set up correctly, and I'll explain what I mean by that. So the way we had set up maybe at IBM, the reward system was give innovators points for coming up with ideas. So what then happens is people come up with a ton of ideas. You will find some individuals putting 20 ideas and saying that, oh, okay, I have collected 20 points, right? Second is there is the outcome is expected in a longer term. That is maybe after 2 years. If you are expecting an outcome after 2 years, how do you reward the progress that is happening on the way, right? That is a very tough thing to actually balance for a company, because there is always that chance that everyone loves their own idea and they will continue to build on it, continue to consume budgets. And this is where I think there is a mismatch which companies today still have not been able to solve. That is how to set up the reward system for all the players in the ecosystem in innovation, in furthering the cause of innovation. So I hope it is clear so far. Any questions? Any comments?
Sir, for the reward system, can they not set up the milestone in every, say, 6 months or so for a development of a project, and then they can, basically reward them
Yes, they do that.
appropriately?
Yes, they definitely do that. That is one thing that companies definitely do. The reward system when it comes to say the people who are at the higher levels, that is division heads, etc. For them, it's a bit tricky for the company to set up the reward system for them, because they are usually measured based on what they contributed either to the revenue or new product creation, etc., right? Or maybe manufacturing efficiency. So if you imagine the head of a division who's in charge of manufacturing, how do you incentivize that guy to help trying out new ideas? Like, the only thing that he can do is he will say, okay, if you want my lab, or if you want my machines to play with, be my guest, come here on a Sunday or come here on the day that the factory is not working or whatever. You can do what you want. So for that person to positively contribute and measure how well he is contributing, very often companies actually go with this philosophy which exists everywhere in management now. And personally, I have some disagreement with that philosophy. That is, results matter. Of course, results matter. I don't want to say that results don't matter. But this is something where actions also have to be rewarded, right? Very rarely you will see anyone saying in management that you should reward actions but not results. But when you don't have the results the results are going to happen only 2 years down the road. in my opinion, rewarding actions, right actions becomes important. Now, how do you evaluate right actions? How do you decide what is the right action? So there are two things, right? One is I can participate in something simply because I'm going to get a point or I'm going to get some bonus for submitting some ideas, right? So my heart is not actually in it. I am simply doing it for quote unquote, gaming the system or getting a better appraisal. It's not that I am actually interested in that innovation so much. So how do you distinguish the people who fall in the first category versus the second? That is where it kind of gets tricky for the organization. And I think what they are doing wrong is not actually rewarding, not trusting maybe a few people on a longer term, maybe people who can form of innovation leadership committee, keep them in place for 3 to 4 years, and trust their word, right? Trust their word for which innovation and which of the people are actually doing good work with good intention and are actually making progress. So for this, really, there is very few metrics can actually be put, intermediate metrics, which can be measured in a hard way. So you can't use revenue as a metric. You cannot use efficiency as a metric till something is ready, right? So these are this is where I think the disconnect actually is happening in a lot of companies. And that is especially where the cycle of delivery is long. If you talk about software companies, or if you talk about, say, portal based companies like Facebook, Google, etc., I have heard that Facebook does private launches. So there are features of Facebook that they will launch only in one country in South America, and they will see the response to it, and they will see how it is working. They will see what bugs are getting reported, etc., etc., and then they will make a general worldwide launch. So but it is easier for a software company to deploy something, to build and deploy. That cycle is much shorter. The companies that are struggling are the ones which have a long product development cycle. I mean, typically the brick and mortar companies, right? Manufacturing companies, pharmaceutical companies, etc. So for them, the development cycle itself is so long that this becomes a challenge. Okay, so some other terminology I would like. How much time do we have? Just 1 second. Okay, so we have a bit of time. So some terminology that I would like to get you acquainted with. There you will hear about closed innovation versus open innovation. So what is closed innovation is something that happens within the boundaries of the company. And open innovation is when a company is actually collaborating with external entities, right, to drive and further their cause of innovation. So in a closed innovation, maybe one variant is there is a dedicated innovation lab where people can go and build prototypes. There's time free given to employees for working there in those labs. Second is what we saw, what I mentioned, is a formal corporate innovation program where there is a chief innovation officer, and then there are technical leaders appointed by the management team, etc. And prototypes are built. But all of this is happening with employees strictly of the company, right? So these are closed innovation examples. What are open innovation examples that companies are trying out today? Is one is you fund promising startups with the intention to acquire, right? So I don't know if you know, Baiju is funded by Facebook. So clearly there is an intention. It is not similar to any venture funding. We should be careful in understanding this intention. So the intention somewhere is to acquire and to expand into that space, right? It is not only to invest the money that they have free and see how much money they can get out of that investment. That's not the intention, because Facebook is not a venture capital company. The venture capitalists are neutral to what domain, what you're doing, etc. And they don't have the intention of integrating that startup into their mainstream. right? So whereas when a company engages in an open innovation project, the intention in funding a startup is to acquire. The second is, and by the way, I mean, Google has companies that they have funded in India. In the education space, they're also trying things out with language translation because of regional languages, a variety of languages we have in India, translation services, etc. They're trying things out there. And they have funded small companies which have, so Google has taken them, and if those companies are able to succeed, they will integrate them and buy them. Now, the other approach, rarely done, but still it does happen, is just to overcome the bureaucratic aspects of an organization, right? Many companies recognize that they are bureaucratic, they are slow moving animals. IBM is a well-known example of being a slow moving animal. They spin off small companies. So they basically tell a set of people saying that we are hiving this off. Few of you will, join this company, run this, grow this to a certain level, and we will acquire you back. And if the company doesn't work, you still have your job with the company with the following terms and conditions, etc. So they're sort of put on a sabbatical outside of the company to run a small startup. Right? That's one. But the original idea of that company comes from the large company itself. So it's a specific sort of charter given to them. The third is there are external hackathons also companies are encouraging. So that is what they're doing is they actually welcome external participants and they take the top ideas from those contests and for further development. Maybe they make offers to those people to join the companies if they're passionate enough or simply acquire those ideas. So these are open innovation type of approaches. Now, I think in the beginning someone mentioned about patenting, and I think this is an important point I would like to clarify, that there is a notion that has been floated everywhere that patenting is innovation, and it really is not. I mean, yes, innovations can be patented, good ideas can be patented, but patenting usually is a very slow route to building anything useful and making revenue in the market, right? How many of you are familiar with patenting and what happens there? How many of you are working in companies where there is talk about patenting and the company files patents?
Sir, I have been, working with a company where the patents are being encouraged. Uh, but little that I know, it's like basically there are two types of patent that they actually reward. One is inside any software, if any development is being made in a program or algorithm, they patent that algorithm in particular, and that's a like very minimal reward. And then there is like the other one where they have actually developed a new product of some kind, which is more as a team reward that they give,
Right, right,
and
right.
that
So,
patent number would be registered with the US office, and they will get their patent number and everything.
right, correct. So many times the large companies do patenting as a defensive measure, in the sense that they keep patenting ideas that actually they may not have the intention of productizing, but they want to protect the space and prevent competitors from getting into that space. So if they come across ideas that they keep this engine and machinery running, where they have patenting going on, but that is more to prevent saying that if some other company comes and says that we have come up with this new idea, they say, well, guess what, we already patented it, so you can't make money on it. So that more often than not, it's a defensive measure. And yes, there are quite a few companies driving patenting as a way of or how should I call it, as a way of reporting to headquarters saying that we are doing innovation. But in reality, it doesn't really contribute so much to innovation per se, leading to revenue for the company, right? So it's something, it's a observation. A good friend of mine was leading AT&T's innovation program for a few years. He gave a talk, I think about 3 months back, in our webinar series. I think last term, most of you, I think, were already in this program, Gorti Srinivas Rao. And he has 40 patents in his name at AT&T, through AT&T. And he got disgruntled by the whole thing. And he said, well, the patents actually don't lead to anything. So then he decided that he wanted to do something that is more relevant and get into this driving innovation at AT&T. And then eventually set up a company of his own, offering innovation, consulting, and services. So anyway, there's so much about patenting. So I think we have covered most things. I have covered most things I wanted to. So in summary, I mean, these are all difficult times. How does one contribute to innovation? So I think there is always, at least I lived for quite some time with this notion that if I have an idea, it's my idea, right? And I think that's only natural. Yes, it is your idea, but the other way, I think, other way to look at this, and one needs to expand, one's own way of thinking, is that we all learn from each other. So while an idea is your idea, it helps to get co-creators, co-innovators with you, so that you are able to develop that idea into something substantial. It helps to actually involve and work with sales and marketing people to get early feedback on what you are building, and get the business angle in as quickly as possible. Like I have mentioned on the slide deck, idea is a start, not the end. You should ideate, test, get feedback, and refine. The other very important thing, although people talk about it, right, is to contribute to someone's ideas also. That is, if a person comes to you, how does a culture evolve? How does a positive culture evolve? Is you put yourself in the shoes of a person who comes up with an idea. What happens in India most of the times, I think most of us, and barring a few exceptions maybe, are guilty of this, that the moment someone says this is an idea, maybe we can try this out, etc., there are 5 people who jump on that person and say, but this will happen, but this will happen, but that will happen. So everything starts with but don't you think, or this will be the drawback of it, this will be a problem. So imagine what is happening. A couple of things are happening, right? One is a potentially good idea is actually getting killed because that person has just got one idea. He's not thought through the entire thing. He's not also claiming that I've got one entire business plan laid out. He's nowhere making a claim. So you're potentially killing an idea. You're also contributing to a culture of negativity if you do that, where people no longer feel. So that becomes a way of working in the workplace, and you no longer encourage any positive improvements. So whether it is a grand innovation or a small innovation in the way we work, that culture of positivity is very important. Only then you may be able to hit upon something really grand. Because it cannot be that someone has hit upon a very great idea, but the whole culture around is of people who are very critical of others. Very little chance that anything will actually happen, anything good will come out of it. So it's a mindset and it's a culture, and that one needs to embrace. If you are a manager, and I'm assuming that most of you are already managers and maybe becoming senior managers, executives. The most important or the best thing you can do if you are not going to innovate yourselves, right, is to say yes. So what that means is, if a person comes up to you, one of your direct reports comes up and says that, I have this thought, can we do this, etc., say yes. First thing to do is to say yes and say, okay, let's set up a meeting. You explain to me what you want to do. You will have a lot more experience maybe than that person, and you will know maybe at the outset that maybe not a lot will come out of it. But your goal is different. Your goal is to actually encourage that individual to continue in that positive direction. It is your focus is actually not on the idea that person has brought forward to you. Your focus is on the individual. As a manager, your focus is on that person to encourage him or her. And so you go through this exercise intentionally of looking at that idea, getting a few other people and asking those people, you tell me what best can we do with this idea. There is a very different, it's a very different way of thinking than saying that let's discuss this out. Discuss means let's discuss the positives, negatives, how to take it to market, how to operationalize this, how to get the funding, all sorts of questions come up. The first step as a manager you can do if you want to encourage your team members to innovate is to only take the encouraging steps and not play the role of a critique. That's the best thing you can do as a manager. So facilitate whatever that individual is trying to do. Maybe he will go forward 2 steps and fail. That's fine. He will learn. Maybe he will go forward 4 steps and come up with something really good. Again, benefit to all of you, right? Don't get into the role of being the evaluator of that person's ideas. If you are not a technical guru or expert in what he's brought forward, simply take the process forward, take the ball forward, move the needle forward 1 step, take him to the right people, network that person with other departments, other maybe senior technical leaders. If you are not a technical leader, put him in touch with technical leaders. That's the role you can play. And that is what will help the culture, help the individual. It will also give you immense satisfaction when you do that, when you facilitate something like that as a manager. And I have seen examples, I have seen examples in my working life in the industry that the managers made a lot of difference. The ones who said, okay, I'm giving you a free hand, try it out. And many times the managers don't actually interfere apart from just networking, helping the person network. Those managers have produced great innovators. So your role, in summary, your role is need to be very careful in thinking about your role in the whole ecosystem of innovation. How many of you, I would like to just do a quick show of hands. How many of you are managers today and how many are not? Maybe a quick show of hands, how many are managers? Okay, but I'm assuming that most of you are interested at some point in becoming managers, right? So if that is the case, then if that is the case, you will come across innovation at some point, and the charter of innovation within your company at some point. And Vidya has mentioned Scrum Master. Yes, maybe not a people manager, but of course a similar role. So it's very important to understand your role in the whole system. If you are not a technical lead or technical contributor, if you are not doing technical work, then it's important for you to play the role of the manager who facilitates innovation, right? And the only way to do that is to network and to encourage innovators, right? So I think I will stop with that. Maybe a quick glance at what is happening in India, that is startups. There are several startups. Government is encouraging giving a lot of grants for in incubators in Dayanand Sagar University. I'm sure you are aware there are 2 incubators. One is called Derby. You may have seen the board right above in the first building. And there are innovation exchanges set up and accelerators, right? And then of course there are venture capital companies. So there is a fair bit of activity that is happening, exciting activity, not just in the developed countries, but in India. and there is encouragement given, that there are just like companies require good managers to foster innovation. There are people looking for management skills and talent to partner with them, because they have ideas, they are maybe technically sound, they are more innovators, inventors, so to speak, engineers, but they are looking for partners who can actually form a company. Usually those people are not good at going and selling stuff, or getting grants, etc., right? So, or running a company for that matter, and they are not interested many times. So it's a great opportunity for people who may want to do a startup. There are people looking for partners with backgrounds such as yours. So it's a great time to be in the space of innovation. So with that, I will stop unless there are any questions. If there are any questions, please ask now. Okay. So,
Sir,
yeah, go ahead.
one good example would be to say of Steve Jobs, right? Steve Jobs
Yes,
and Steve Wozniak. Steve Wozniak was a technical guy, and Steve Jobs helped him develop that, like business as a manager.
correct, correct. That is a great example. Exactly. Thank you. Anyone else? Any comments? So I'll give you one closing example of, since you brought up the good example of Steve Jobs. What was heard about the way he would foster and encourage innovation is, he would throw out a challenge saying that any software, any app which works on the iPhone will be put on the iPhone store. So we will not put a set of people as bottlenecks who will sit down and evaluate the business potential. Is there a revenue potential for this, etc.? Is the idea great? So two questions, right? Is the idea really great? Is it really cool? Does it fit with iPhone's culture, etc.? No, we will not do any of that. Will we evaluate how much money it's going to make? No, we will not do that. So you just throw that challenge out. And if your code essentially works, if you're able to build an app that works, you are free to go and put it out on the App Store. Is the way he drove some innovation initially. So what that did was, it's not actually contributing or taking part or meddling with what people are able to do. And I think his famous line was that I don't innovate. I have simply gather a team that innovates. That is all I do, and I encourage that team. So that I'm sure was a very it was a big contrast, stark contrast to what I have experienced in software companies, where there are senior folks who sit there and they kind of take the call on is something good or not. So people have to go through a hierarchy, bureaucracy, and that can be discouraging. So whereas look at his style, he said that all of you are great, put it on the App Store. If it works, it works. And naturally, if the app is not downloaded many times, then it will die its own natural death. But these are examples of great leadership. So okay, I will stop with that. We will take a 10-minute break, and then we will talk about design thinking and how it connects with innovation, not only product, but other innovation as well. So I think it's, what time is it? It's 2:50. We'll start at 3. Is that okay?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So I will come back at 3 o'clock then. Thanks. Okay, let's start again. So for this part of the session, we will talk about design thinking. How many of you have heard the term or are familiar with what design thinking is about? Could we have a quick show of hands? No one has come across design thinking.
No idea, sir.
Okay, fine. So that gives me an idea of where I should start. Okay, so design thinking, as the name may suggest, is about design. Is the common understanding of it. One second, let me try to share this slideshow. I hope you're seeing the slide.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay, so design thinking, as the name suggests, is about design, is what most people think. But there is one sort of a twist to it. It did start with product design. So it started with product design in the sense that people who had knowledge of a certain area, maybe pharmaceuticals or maybe cars, furniture, they would design artifacts, they would design objects, and then that would be they would be considered experts, and they would go on designing the new variants of those, etc. At some point, people realize that it is important to talk to users, right, in improving your designs, or in fact, even starting to do a design. It's important to talk to users, and it's important to understand what they feel, what emotions they have when they use a certain product, what conveniences or inconveniences they experience. I'm sure all of you have heard of ergonomics. So earlier we would all have these benches that we sat on, maybe in colleges or schools, but the chairs you get in your offices are much more ergonomic, much more suited to sitting for long periods of time. So user experience started to become very important, and rightly so. Now, what evolved from that is design thinking is not simply restricted to physical product design of physical products, but rather it evolved and it became bigger into using a style of thinking, style of decision making for much broader set of problems. So what are example problems? The common problem that one may think about is use thinking to design the next version of an iPhone or a Nokia phone, maybe the next model of car. But it evolved, the principles and the methodology developed into using these for enhancing the user experience in many different ways. That is, for sales. How do you use design thinking so that a salesperson can sell more effectively? How do you use design thinking to teach more effectively? So this is not actually to build a product and improve the experience of a consumer, but rather the consumer can come in many forms. And the consumer could be a patient in a hospital, the consumer could be a nurse in a hospital, not necessarily using a product, not necessarily using a physical product, but how do you improve the quality of their life? How do you improve their experience? And what does experience comprise of? What people think, what people physically experience, what emotions they have, right? All of those aspects. So that is where it sort of evolved. So there are many examples today. Today it has become so popular as a problem-solving methodology that in examples, famous examples, I'll cite some. Indra Nooyi has used this in running Pepsi, her company. as design thinking as a methodology for coming up with business decisions, making business decisions. Apple uses design thinking in its product design. There are NGOs in Bangalore, in India, in Bangalore, that have been helped by design thinking. So there are design thinking consulting firms that go to companies and say, okay, what are problems that you want to solve? What are your challenges? So NGOs have this challenge of raising funds continuously, right? So while they use the simple methods of marketing, maybe digital marketing, people going from home to home collecting funds, it is still not a systematic thing, and they struggle at some point to raise funds. So there are companies in Bangalore that specialize in design thinking practice and have gone and helped NGOs to improve their way of generating funds or revenue, not revenue really, but raising funds. So a variety of problems have been solved using design thinking, including problems of social relevance, social importance, right? How to improve certain social behaviors. And people have tried these, there are several examples. If you look up, you will find a range of problems that have been solved using design thinking. So what started with physical products, then to user experience in the physical products, has now evolved into a full-blown, very popular methodology. So let's start with an example of GE Healthcare. GE Healthcare builds CT scan machines. And when children, if for some unfortunate reason, if children have to go through a CT scan, the machine makes a lot of noise. The children have to go into sort of a tunnel. I don't know how many of you have been through a CT scan, but you have to sort of go inside a tunnel. Basically, they roll you inside. The machine makes noise. There is some light thrown on you, etc. So it can be a pretty scary experience for children, certainly. Now, what did GE Healthcare in a hospital in America do? They employed the help of design thinking consultants to solve this or overcome this challenge. Now, what is the challenge? The children get scared, yes. So as an outcome, what happens is the person whose CT scan is being done is supposed to stay absolutely still so that the image is stable. Now, children are not able to do that. And as a result, what used to happen was they will give some tranquilizers to children, which is a very bad thing. So they'll give some tranquilizers to kids and then get them to be stable, or maybe like in a dazed state or whatever, and then do the scan. Not at all a nice thing, right? So here's what they did, and let's look at the video. And let me know if the video you are not able to see the video. Are you seeing the video?
Sorry,
Professor.
Buffering.
It's buffering, okay. Do you have audio as well from me, from the video?
No, sir. Can't.
No? Okay, so I will just start sharing again. I think that should do it. Okay, let's do this. Share computer sound.
Well, we're here today for a CT scan of Duncan's sinuses. He's had some really chronic congestion and coughing. So we're going to have a look and see what's going on in there. And the pirate room was pretty cool. Mm-hmm. The room was painted completely like a pirate setup, including the floor. The floor was like the dock with the water on the sides, and animals and things on the walls. And the CT scanner itself was like the wheel of a pirate ship. It's for a child, it can be kind of scary. You see things that make noise and it look very institutional, and this is, you're not even really thinking about the fact that you're doing a procedure. Very, very welcoming, very whimsical and fun.
We were sedating a lot of our children to keep them still while we were imaging them, so there wasn't motion on the images. And we found out that maybe if we could distract them long enough, we could get them through the scan without sedation. And although sedation is done very safely here at Children's, it still has some risk to it, and we wanted to reduce that risk. So in the hospital in Oakland, we started in our CT scanner, and we were able to take simple things like murals on the wall, disco balls, projecting images on the ceiling, and change the atmosphere from being so medical in CT to almost being an underwater sea adventure with mermaids and fish. And it worked. We found out we were able to reduce sedations in that CT scanner by about 90%. And after we realized how successful this was, it was during the time we were getting ready to come to the new hospital. We decided that we could make this so much better with the opportunity of new rooms and new scanners and new equipment. So we began to partner with GE, and we came up with what's now known as the Adventure Series.
My name's Stephen Jones, and I'm a nurse at Children's Hospital in Pittsburgh, here in the radiology department, and exactly in my favorite room, which is the Pirate Room, that we've designed with GE, and it's themed to help the children, get through the scans, feel a little bit more comfortable, to feel like it's not so medical, more friendly, and that way we can use that atmosphere to warm them up, get them into the scanner, and then from that point to complete the exam. It'd be like 6 or 7 years ago, it would be a plain old scanner with no decorations at all, and kids who look at that machine as being something very scary. And I would just look at my coworkers for little things that they would do to help the kids get through those scans. Everything from pretending that they were at a hair salon, getting their hair washed, to painting their nails, imagination that we're going somewhere, some things like that. And then we decided as a group to go ahead and decorate the scanners, and that seemed to be a great step in the right direction. And so we just continued with that train of thought, and added some massage therapy, rocking the scanners, putting the parents up on the scanners with the kids, making it more fun, storytelling and things like that. Then we started working with GE, and then we actually themed out some of the rooms to be a story. So in many situations, I will be in a room preparing the child to come into the scanner, and I'll start talking about the pirate adventure, actually giving the kid a pirate hat to wear, getting them to usually get on board with me, going, "Arr," like, "What does a pirate say?" And they're like, "Arr." And so we'll just run down the hallway together to get on the pirate ship. And then once we do, it's usually pretty easy to get them through the scan. A lot of the doctor's offices take a while to realize that, this kid doesn't need sedation. They'll be just fine doing this test because we work with the kids that well. And so they're surprised. And over the years, it's kind of funny that they've caught on to it. They're like, "Oh no, you'll do fine at Children's." They don't even order sedation anymore because they know you'll be just fine. You're going to Children's, and that's going to be great because you're going to have a good experience there.
So I hope you got the gist of it. So any thoughts, any comments? What do you think about what you just saw?
So they try to understand the pain point of the children first, right? And
Can you speak up a little bit?
yeah, Professor, it's Vidya here. So what I felt is they try to understand what is the pain point for them to do the scanning for the children.
Yes.
And medically also they try to ensure that for this for a reason which is not really valid, like giving sedation for something which is just a scan, they wanted to avoid that. So they try to take two things into consideration is what I felt.
Correct, correct. Anyone else? Okay, so where does design thinking tie into this? Design thinking is a method of overcoming a challenge or solving a problem or taking up an opportunity by focusing on the persona involved, the focus being on the user. Now, in this whole ecosystem, of course, the patient is the focus, but it's the patient experience, right? What they focused on is the patient experience. So where the way design thinking was employed here. Yes, Praveen. Yes, Praveen, go ahead.
No, hi sir, I'm Praveen. Sir, I just want some more explanation, sir. I didn't got this point, sir.
About how they.
Your design process.
Sorry, you want an explanation about what happened in the video actually?
Yeah, yes, sir.
Okay, okay. So children are taken for in what the situation before was that if children need to be taken for a scan, CT scan, there is a machine that does the scan, and essentially any person who has to go through that scan is put on sort of a roller bed and then pushed inside that cylindrical enclosure, right? And then the scan happens inside there. So there's probably radioactivity and all those things, and there is a lot of noise. So children get scared of it. So because they get scared of it, they start to move around, and which is not desirable to do the scan. So when you are going through the scan, you are expected to be absolutely still so that they can get some constant images and so on. Now, in order to do that, in order to get children to do that, they would sedate the children. They would give them some, I don't know, maybe half, partial anesthesia or something of that kind, and which is not a good thing for a small child to be sedated like that, right? So they wanted to avoid that practice of sedation, and then they employed some design thinking consultants to try out a few things. So the focus of design thinking is always on the people involved, that is personas involved. When doing the scan, there are several personas: the parent, the patient, that is the child, the doctors, nurses are the main persona, right? Now, focus is of course on the main persona is the child, and the focus is on improving the experience of the child so that you don't have to give the sedation. So essentially then what they did was that they turned it into some sort of a game where the child thinks is dressed up as a pirate or whatever, and then told that, this is a challenge, you have to go through this. If you get through this, then you will get so many points, etc. It's a game, and you are going to go inside a game enclosure and those things. So essentially, it's a bit of a trickery for the child, but makes the child sort of not aware that there is something going to happen, and say, you know what, now maybe there will be some thunder and lightning and some sound. So the child is not scared. The child doesn't think that there is actually scan being done, and actually enjoys the experience maybe to some extent. And you avoid the sedation, like the lady you saw said that about 90% of the cases, sedation was avoided. So that was the big change, and that was done by design thinking consultants by employing their methodology of focusing on a person as opposed to sort of the end goal, which is to do the CT scan somehow. So I thought, did someone have a question, Rantika?
Sir, I have a question.
Yes.
Yeah, sir, can you please provide us with another example wherein a problem cropped up and they used design thinking to overcome it?
Yeah, there are several examples, and in fact, we will do a little exercise where I will request you folks to, if you already have maybe teams formed which are used for, you have teams in other courses, maybe in teams or individually. Some of you, I would like you to come forward, and we will list out a few problems, and we'll do a mini exercise where you can come up with using. Let's understand the template of doing this, of how design thinking is done, and then we will do an exercise which will clarify what is the range of problems that can be solved using design thinking. Yeah. So let's go through a little bit of terminology and how the methodology works, and then we'll come to some examples. So the cycle of design thinking is as follows. First is, and this is taken from the source for this is Stanford University Design School. Stanford University is actually the most famous for running their design thinking programs. First is empathize. That is, you understand who are the important people involved in that problem, right? So in the one that we saw, the important people, and the most important person, of course, is the child. Then there are other people also involved: the doctors, nurses, patients, etc. I mean, parents, etc. So for all the people, you empathize and understand what experience they are having, right? The next step, and we will detail this out as we go. So as long as you just see the bigger circles and understand, next step is to define the problem. So sort of articulate what problem we are trying to solve. Third is create some ideas, generate some ideas, build a prototype, right? A trial of a solution, a trial solution. Prototype need not be a physical artifact. I mean, we are not necessarily always trying to solve something that has a physical outcome. It can just be a process. The outcome can be a process as well. Test it out, assess it, and then go back, right? So what is a persona? A persona is a role. Essentially, it's a role in an ecosystem. So if we take Bangalore traffic, my favorite example, if we say that we want to employ design thinking for improving Bangalore traffic, what are the personas that come to mind? One persona I will list is a two-wheeler rider. What other personas come to mind? Who are the important roles? Who are the important people in the system?
Cabs, BMC buses.
Sorry, can you speak up a bit?
Cabs and buses, transport buses.
Yeah, but the persona are the drivers, right? The people.
Drivers,
right? Then who else? Pedestrians?
Yes, sir.
What about policemen? Traffic police? I know we usually think of traffic police as, okay, they are going to, not going to manage traffic well, they will cut challans, etc. But their role is important in the functioning of the ecosystem, right? So if you look at it dispassionately, not emotionally, taking care of their challenges, their problems is important. So including them as a persona is important. Other persona maybe are people who actually govern the traffic system, set up the signals, etc. So there are people involved in the whole ecosystem who are very important, correct? So if it comes to education, for example, if you are making a decision about which college to join, when you made a decision about which college to join, who are the personas involved in that decision? You yourself is one. Who else?
The third party, which was Charo.
Yes. Parents, someone said, that is correct. If you are married, if you have a spouse, the spouse will be involved in that decision, right? If you're going to immigrate to another country, you're making a decision of that kind. Your entire family, your parents, your children, your spouse, those are the personas involved, correct? Because if you immigrate to another country, whose lives are changed? Your life, your spouse, your children, your parents, their lives are changed. So when you make a decision, considered decision, we inherently include all these in the ecosystem of making a decision, correct? So that is what we mean by a persona. So when you're employing design thinking, to either improve a situation or come up with a solution to a problem, a persona means a role essentially, right? Of people of a certain kind, people belonging to a certain category. It's a category of people. So if it's an IT system in a company, it's the IT users, IT implementers, management, people who sanction the budgets, all are important. Okay, so that is about a persona. Now, what is the next step once you identify persona in a design thinking exercise? Here is a persona template. Try to understand the persona. That is, What do we mean by understanding? Of course, the name, role, background, etc. But what are the goals of the persona? What is the persona trying to accomplish? What will make that persona happy and successful? So it's a bit of a formal exercise. So sometimes when we are making a decision, you will hear statements like, let's not get very emotional, let's be practical, right? What does that statement mean? The statement means that because someone is bringing emotions into that decision, which is also fair, which is also important. At the same time, the practical considerations are also important. So if you are planning a family trip, it's important to balance emotions and your budgets and the time available to you. How much time are you going to get away from your work? So there are practical considerations, there are emotional considerations. So something that you think through and something that you feel. You want to have a good experience when you go on a vacation, but you also want to be practical, right? You have certain goals. So what are those goals? What are the goals of the persona? If you're planning a family vacation, then you're saying you, your spouse, children, and the children's motivations are different. Their goals are different, right? Their goal is not sightseeing most of the time. If your goal may be sightseeing, the children are not bothered about it. They're probably bothered about food. They're probably bothered about, are we going to go to some theme park or, things of that nature. What will you buy for them when you go on a vacation? Those are things that matter to them. Are you going to do some maybe adventure sports or some activity like that? Will you get to roller skate? Their motivation goals are different, but it's important to, in a design thinking exercise, you make a list of all critical, all important persona, and then list down their goals and motivations and attempt to solve the conflicts, because all persona will not have the same goals. So you attempt to solve the conflict, right? So it's a very systematic way. You make a list of persona, then make a list of their goals. What you create, which is the most popular term and most commonly used tool in design thinking, is an empathy map. So let's go back to the example of Bangalore traffic and say that the user of this exercise is the motorcycle rider, and what is his or her empathy map? So what does he say about Bangalore traffic? What does he think about Bangalore traffic? What does he feel? And what does he do? So thinking and feeling are different things. Thinking is something that you sort of do logically and say, okay, well, I wish this was better, etc. Feeling is something you just say, oh God, this is so disgusting. I'm stuck in this signal. What is this nonsense? Why can't people improve things? These are just emotions coming out. What do you say? What do you actually articulate as your thoughts is important. And finally, what you do. So when you set out to go from one place to another, you plan, you maybe look at Google Maps, you decide a different route, you decide a time when you will start to go from one place to another. Let's say it's an IT system you are using in a company. So if you are a user, you may get frustrated with certain things. You may feel, oh wow, this improvement is so nice, right? If you change your mobile, for example, or if you change your laptop, if you change from a laptop to a tablet, there is a different experience you get. You feel, oh God, this keyboard and mouse thing was nice, it was actually missing. But sometimes you feel, well, this is so light. If I use a tablet, it's so light and it's so nice. So the feeling is nice, but the inconveniences make you think, right? And then you say certain things, and what is the action you take? Maybe you decide to return the tablet. So you create an empathy map, right, of anyone and everyone who is involved in this exercise of design thinking with a specific goal. So if we go back to our example of Bangalore traffic, make a list of all the personas, 3-4 important personas, make an empathy map of all the things that they say, think, feel, and do. That's the process. So I'm just explaining to you how the design thinking process plays out. Usually this is done as a 1-day or a 2-day exercise. You bring several people within a company. If it is done within a company, you bring several people who are involved, you can call, maybe stakeholders. You need not necessarily have all the persona there, but you need to then understand the persona, right? So if you're doing an exercise for empathy map, if you're creating an empathy map for building a new product, you may or may not have customers in the meeting, in the design thinking exercise. If you can, well and good. But if you cannot, then you still need to build an empathy map for a customer or an end user, right? So here is an example of Maureen, and what does Maureen say about a new software tool, right? What does Maureen feel? The new tools are, I hope you can read, new tools are a waste of time. I'm overwhelmed. I'm pressed for time, etc., etc. Right? What does Maureen think? How do I use new tools to make my job easier? This is logical sort of thinking. It's not just an emotional reaction, right? Other thing, I need help to understand the new security requirements. Now, what does Maureen do? Creates keys, maybe manages hundreds of thousands of keys, writes a lot of complex code. These are actions Maureen takes, right? And then what does Maureen say? I'm not a security expert. I need help. Needs to make some more design changes to make the design is correct. So if this is software developer, this is the gamut of things that you list out. So in a typical design thinking exercise, you may have about 15-20 people in a room. It does not matter. There is no hierarchy in the room. You will have executive level people. You will have fresh hires. You will have middle management, all people there. Collectively, you will identify a set of persona that you are going to work on. And when you say work on, what we mean by that is you're going to identify a persona whose life experience you want to improve. So again, going to the Bangalore traffic example, we want to improve the lives of the following persona: pedestrian, car drivers, passengers, bus drivers, policemen. We want to improve the quality of their life. Their thinking should improve. Their feeling should improve. Their doing should become easier, right? So first we list out the state as is. Now, if there are 20 people in a room where 3-4 people are bike riders, 4 people maybe drive cars, few people commute in a bus, bus passengers as well as bus drivers are important, police, traffic police, and you make a list for all the personas that you decide to focus on. Make a list of all these things. What does this lead to? Essentially, it's a characterization, or essentially it's capturing all the traits of that person, right? Then next thing is,
sorry for interrupt.
Yes.
Yeah, yes, sir. From what I've been able to comprehend is that design thinking is more of brainstorming, right?
Yes, it is a systematic brainstorming to come up with a solution in a rapid period of time, in a short period of time.
Okay.
And it's a consensus-based decision making. There is no hierarchy in that. There is no brainstorming. The slight difference between brainstorming and design thinking, I would say, in brainstorming, there is a lot of discussion. In design thinking, discussion is actually not encouraged, it's discouraged. So it's intuitive feeling what you feel. Whatever you feel intuitively about a situation is what you put down. So let's go back to this example. If you're capturing the persona of Maureen, you're doing that exercise. Everyone, all the people who have put up post-its here have contributed these to that persona. It is not only Maureen who has put this. It is other people who understand Maureen have put all these post-its on the board. Now, these have been put very intuitively without influencing each other. So if you have an executive next to you and you are a software developer, you are free to put what you believe should be put here, right? So there is no influencing. There is really not that discussion based approach. Yes, it is true that it is, in a way, it is intuitive brainstorming, but not without discussion.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Yeah, sure. So then you come up with a POV, that is, you come up with a POV which says, what is the point of view and what's the goal? So here probably the text is blurred, but this says the user X needs a way to accomplish Y, and what is the reason for it? That is the current problem. So I would state, if I was a driver and if I'm driving a car and if I go every day from MG Road to the Sagar University, I will say Rahul needs a way to reach in 20 minutes less because of the current traffic conditions or the stress of traffic, or because of the physical fatigue he feels. So the driving reason is the physical fatigue, I feel. So as a result of that, what is the aim? To reduce the traffic, reduce the driving time, right? And who? So who, what, and what is the reason for it? Now, this is something that may be very obvious, but look at it in a slightly different way, that I may want something else. I may be okay to drive longer time as long as I don't have to do, I don't have to keep changing gears and I don't have to stop at traffic lights and people cutting lanes, etc. So is the choice between driving 40 minutes painlessly and driving 20 minutes painfully, is the choice very obvious? I don't think it is. Someone may want to drive, someone may be okay driving, cutting through lanes for 10 minutes, 15 minutes. And someone may say, well, I'm okay to spend 1 hour. As long as the traffic is just smooth and I just keep driving, I enjoy driving, right? So that user, what does that user actually want is important. So when we go back to this, what does Maureen think? So she thinks, how do I use new tools to make my job easier? What does Maureen feel? She feels I'm pressed for time. So what does that lead to is how to reduce the time she spends, right? That becomes a goal. So each one of these can lead to a goal. If she's feeling overwhelmed, basically she's feeling stressed. So she's feeling stressed. How do you reduce that stress? Becomes a goal. Yeah. So all the things that are put together here can lead to a goal. But then do we take all of this? No. So that is sort of the beauty of the structure of design thinking. There are several things which are put here. Yeah. Now, to do this, how do we do this is you take this chart. Imagine there are 10, 15 people who, maybe 7, 8 people who have contributed to this chart, right? And they are not Maureen. I mean, Maureen could be one of them, but there are people who understand that persona. What do? They get into a very simple voting exercise. So you are given, if you are participating in design thinking, you are given a vote, 1 vote or 2 votes, and you can put those 2 votes anywhere on the post-its. So basically you decide prioritization of the problems. So all the people, it's simple, straightforward voting. Just the way our voting system works in the world is a person, whether that person is of certain age, of certain income, or certain caste or creed, has a single vote. So you have 1 vote and you can put your vote on anything. So if everyone comes up and says that I am pressed for time, comes up and votes on that, that becomes the problem that you are going to focus on. If many people actually put the vote on some other post-it and say, I don't know, maybe put the vote on focusing on this problem, that is, needs to make sure design is correct, then what that will lead to perhaps is a design review. But then the focus becomes this. So all the symptoms and all the feelings, emotions, thoughts which are put here are not priority. I mean, they are important, but then you do a quick prioritization exercise for which problem actually to solve, right? Or which symptom of the problem or which experience of that person to solve, to improve. All of design thinking is focused on only one thing, that is to improve the experience of a person. This may sound illogical. At certain times, it will be illogical. If a CEO says that, these are my priorities, typically in an organization, the priorities are just driven down. But when you do a design thinking exercise, the CEO may have put up one post-it, but you will come up with something totally different. And because we said that this person is important, and because the experience of that person is important. Imagine that for Bangalore traffic, while people may not agree, the experience of Bangalore police should be captured, should be focused on. If that becomes the highest priority, maybe if we decide to make that the highest priority, then you do an empathy exercise for Bangalore police and put down the thinking, feeling, actions, etc., and improve their experience. They stand for several hours. Maybe someone will put up saying that, it's not fair for them to stand for 8 hours, even when it's raining, etc. And then how do we change that? It becomes the problem definition. Okay. So the next step after empathy.
Sir, one question here.
Sure.
So on the collection of the information, are we going to the field and taking the information, or how is the data collected on this thinking? Say what does he say? What needs to be done?
Correct. So, right, very good question. So the people who are involved in the design thinking exercise are usually people, you bring in a set of people who are aware of that environment. So if it is a company, let's imagine this is Flipkart, and if one is doing a design thinking design thinking exercise in Flipkart, who are all the people who will be involved in it? People who do the delivery, people who plan the delivery, people who take returns, people who deal with vendors, people who deal with customers, maybe get on a call with customers. And if you can get some customers, all those will be in the room. So there is not a data collection exercise by doing a survey or anything, but simply the knowledge of those people who are involved, who are familiar with that territory, familiar with that business, are in the room, and they will contribute to this exercise. So in a sense, their view is what you go by.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Yeah.
Got it.
So you define. Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry to interrupt, sir.
No
So
problem.
I was thinking this voice. I am a problem manager by profession in IT company.
Yeah.
So does voice of customer, does it come into this view for the persona?
Yes, ideally you should. Ideally, so first is there is some motivation for doing a design thinking exercise. So maybe the motivation is you hear that in the company there is hearing that a lot of customers are dissatisfied, we are getting a lot of complaints, or we are getting returns of products, right? You get information like that. That motivates a design thinking exercise. So there is some general goal which is there for the design thinking exercise. If the goal is that we are lagging in revenue and we want to improve revenue by and large, that is the exercise, then the focus will be that. So in your case, yes, ideally, if you're doing an exercise for, let's say, improving customer satisfaction, the customer should be in the room. If you can get hold of 3-4 good cooperative customers, as in rational customers, not necessarily people who will just come and complain, right? It would be a very good thing to involve customers. If you can, that is the best thing you can do in a design thinking exercise.
Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Yeah. So moving on. Out of this problem statement, then the next thing that you do is every participant, let's read the text carefully on the left side. Every participant contributes ideas. So now from a mode of defining symptoms, right? Every participant was calling out the thinking, feeling of a persona. Every participant gets into, all the same participants get into an exercise of contributing ideas. So similar exercise, they simply go and put up ideas on something similar to this, but they put up ideas instead of these symptoms on this board, right? You write your idea on the post-it and you put it up on the board. That's a very simple, straightforward exercise. Now, ideas could be, let's say, if it is customer satisfaction, then maybe idea could be someone could come up with an idea saying, every festival we should send something to our customers, or when the customers are on hold, instead of playing music, we should play something informational, right? Maybe very crazy ideas can come up also. People can come up with, and every idea is a good idea, as that's a simple rule that we follow, that we must follow in doing a design thinking exercise. So put up all the ideas on the board. If there are 10 participants, maybe you will have 20-30 ideas, and put them up all on the board. Next thing that you do is do a prioritization of the ideas. Now remember that we are doing a ideation for one specific problem statement that we have chosen. So what is the flow of things? First is we are going to select a set of persona, 2, 3, or 4, right? For each persona, we'll create an empathy map like this, which looks like this. Then out of that, we do a voting. Once we do a voting, you are going to pick one problem statement and say, okay, that is the problem statement we are going to focus on. To focus on it, we are going to define the problem statement very carefully in a structured manner. So maybe in your case, Shruti, it could be we will define, maybe you will end up defining the problem statement as how to reduce the customer wait time, right? So then that becomes the problem statement you focus on. So what
Yes.
are different ways to reduce that? There could be, of course, the obvious answer could be have more people answering calls. That's one way. Maybe provide information to customers on as the previous when you log into a call. Typically, when you call any helpline or any place today, they will give you a set of instructions saying that do you know this, etc. That is actually simply to make you reduce your wait time, right? And because if everyone starts talking, then the wait time for customers increases, right? So you try to provide some ideas like that, correct? So other companies, maybe someone will say that if we are providing a software, at the bottom of it, how many of you have seen there is this Microsoft, in Microsoft Office, sometimes earlier at least we used to see tip of the day. Has anyone seen that?
On the 2003 version, sir.
Yeah. So they used to have that. So every time you open the software, it will give you one note. That is essentially to educate you in small bits, make you aware of certain features, certain things that you can do in small bits, which you would not have otherwise learned. And you will have to go through going through the help, going through some communities, etc., to find that out. But they give you the tip of the day, and then you read that and you proceed with your work. So in small bits, they're injecting in you knowledge, right, without you sort of spending too much time on it, and reducing their own. So in that exercise, they're making you perhaps happier, or helping you use the software, also reducing their business cost of supporting you, of giving you question answers, etc. Right? So these are some tricks that may come up with. I mean, people will come up with various different ideas. Every idea is important. Very key thing is no real brainstorming or convincing of team members. So this is almost like a silent exercise, the whole thing. That is, when you say, okay, let's create an empathy map, you simply go and put up what you think or what you believe should be put up there. You don't talk to each other and say, hey, but don't you think, or you look at something somebody else has put up. You don't have the right to go and criticize that and discuss and convince the other person, right? This is not of that. This is not a lobbying exercise at all. Then, similar to the empathy map, when we voted, we do the same thing by voting on ideas as well. So each participant gets equal number of votes, maybe 1 or 2 or 3 votes, and you simply vote on the ideas. And then there is a grid you create of ideas, which looks something like this. So ideas which have very high potential and which are very easy to implement, right? So one axis is feasibility or effort. An idea which is really smart, which can have a large impact without investing too much time, becomes a no-brainer and gets automatically selected in this category. Correct? ideas which are, so who does this categorization? Usually there is a facilitator for design thinking, one or two facilitators in the room. They will go and do this prioritization. So they will just quickly talk to the people who have put up the ideas and say, this idea seems simple to implement. Yes, where should this belong? In a very quick exercise, do this categorization, move the ideas into either this quadrant, this quadrant. The worst quadrant is this, that is unwise ideas, ideas which will take a lot of time to implement, but then don't seem to have very heavy, very high potential as well, right? So discard the ideas which belong to this category, focus on the ideas which have come as no-brainers, and park maybe for the future ideas which are called big bets. Big bet, what is a big bet? Something that has a lot of potential, but it's going to take a lot of effort. So you call it a big bet. But you can maybe still reserve that, keep that aside. Focus really on the no-brainers and build what you call a prototype, right?
Sir?
Yeah.
Yeah, sir, on what grounds is the facilitator chosen?
On what ground is the facilitator chosen? Or yeah, so the facilitator usually is a design thinking consultant who's certified by who comes from either a design thinking company or is certified by, say, universities like Stanford. IBM has a design thinking program where there are levels of certification in design thinking. So one design thinking certification is participant. The next level is a coach. Higher level is even their expert, etc. So there are certifications available for design thinking as well. And let me see, if time permits, we will log into Coursera and see what's available, right, on innovation and design thinking. And I would like to give you some sort of thoughts and ideas on what you can do. And as with everything today, there are a ton of videos on everything that is taught in classrooms. So you can look up design thinking videos, design thinking in action on YouTube. So you will get a feel for, you'll get a realistic sort of design thinking being practiced in a room, right? You'll get a feel for that. I'm sure there are videos of that type, and we will certainly look at Coursera. So let me take a pause here and ask you, how many of you are aware of the fact that we have a partnership with Coursera and there are courses available for free? You're aware?
Yes, Professor. We have also enrolled for courses.
You also enrolled. Okay. So we can also take a look at quickly, what courses are offered in design thinking there in Coursera, and those would be worthwhile doing. So let me pause here, since I have digressed a little bit. It's a very useful skill to have in today's age. In today's times, this is a useful skill to have. Does not actually take, to be very honest, doesn't take anything more than common sense to acquire the skill. It's a very simple brainstorming, or while it is called no brainstorming, but it's something along those lines. A simple way of getting people together, voting on some problem prioritization, voting on ideas, and then defining the roadmap further. Correct? So it's a very simple, lightweight exercise. It's fun to do, and it actually brings out what what organizations many times are not aware of. So imagine this exercise was done by HR, right? HR usually will do some surveys which nobody fills in a company. I mean, we see a lot of times HR surveys as an irritant, and we say, well, why should I spend my time doing this? Anyway, they're not going to do anything. Right? That's the common reaction. Most common reaction is, yeah, they're just doing this for the heck of it. I don't think they will implement anything. But if HR were to do a design thinking exercise, and if they were to focus on, if they were to bring in a few persona in a company, maybe let's take the example of a customer support system and customer support organization. They will maybe people who answer customer calls, then there are a set of people who solve those problems and get back to customers, do some troubleshooting, get all those people there, right? and do a design thinking exercise. If HR facilitates that, what are the pain points you feel? And you don't really call them pain points, but you build an empathy map. So what is a person who deals with customers on the phone? What do they think? What do they feel? I'm sure there are customers who don't use the most decent language sometimes. So they go through that experience. What do they do? How do they deal with their, I mean, what is the, when we say stress, what do they actually feel? Right? Maybe sometimes several of them feel that, I want to go and have a smoke break every now and then. Right? So not a very good thing to be in, not a very good situation to be in. So you can create, HR can do this exercise and create an empathy map, then decide what problems to focus on. Maybe people say that, well, of course, salaries are always low, as any employee will say in any organization, that my salary is lower than what I should get paid. And I always felt that for 25 years. But that's always there. But beyond that, what? Maybe sometimes employees feel that you can employ not a work from home all the time policy, but now that we have been awakened to this thing that we can work from home, perhaps we should go to a mixed model of 1 day in a week should be in office, 4 days should be at home, or maybe for 2 hours you should be on Zoom, available to discuss, etc. So many ideas will come up, right, if this exercise is done. So today, what you see related to COVID happening is that many preachers or pontiffs, as I call them, they have come up, experts have come up and said that this is the new normal. I actually don't believe that everything is going to remain at home. I think things will go back. Some people will go back to work. People will realize what it means to be isolated, working from home for 6 months is different from 2 years or 3 years or 4 years, right? I mean, it's not fun to work from home for 4 years at a stretch. It's not going to be nice. You will get disconnected from what's happening, and we learn a lot from each other, right? So many things will come up, and if you do this exercise, I think some constructive solutions will come up for how much of work from home is good, right? So these are some real examples of how we can do things. So I hope I have answered the question of who's the facilitator. People who are certified design thinking experts or coaches, they usually become facilitators. They conduct that, and they usually conduct that for a fee if it's an external agency. If the company is big enough that they have design thinking experts inside, well and good. Yeah. So this is again a categorization of the ideas. Now let's move to something that is called hills. So let me ask you the difference between obvious difference. What is a mountain and what is a hill? Hill is easier to climb. It's short, doesn't take a lot of effort, and you see the goal in sight, right? I mean, that is actually the most important part of a hill versus a mountain. So in design thinking, what is actually done is you quantify or you define a hill that you are going to capture. So what is done as the next step after ideation is you define a hill that you can deliver in a short period of 2 to 3 months, right? So it could be that we are going to do a prototype and say that we will build we will try something new out, try a new out. The idea that you have selected here as a no-brainer, you will take that and say that we are going to build a hill. That is, we'll take 2 to 3 months and try to achieve a realistic goal in that. Not actually change the world, not to boil the ocean as they call it. We are not going to go for some big bang approach where we will wait for 1 year of the result, but we will define a small step that we will all work towards. So when you get out of the design thinking exercise, what you go out with is a defined hill and a definition of a prototype that will be rolled out. So advantage of the exercise that you conducted so far is you have called out a problem that is agreed upon by most people, that everyone understands. Second, you have done an ideation. You've done an ideation and selected some important ideas, and then you have set a goal. So now let's go back to the POV. So the POV states the user needs a way for achieving something because of a certain reason. Now what you add to this is by when. So what we are going to do is we are going to give a way that if it is me going back to the traffic problem, saying that Rahul needs a way to go from MG Road to Dayanand Sagar University in 15 minutes, right? And in how much time frame are we going to accomplish this goal? How are we going to change the traffic system so that I can get this result? I am the user in this. I am the persona in this. So what is important in this to notice is how is not addressed. And that is specifically, purposely, intentionally kept so. So how this will be addressed is not, how this will be achieved is not addressed. So how gets into the solutioning mode, right? So we are not in the, we don't get into the solutioning mode, rather stay in the goal, problem statement and the goal and the basic idea mode. So the idea will sort of, the idea that you call out will in a way sort of, say that, give a hint about the solution, right? But it will not actually call out the entire solution. So if you get into a solutioning, detailed solutioning mode in a room with 10, 15 people, usually all of us know what will happen. It will turn into a Lok Sabha or Rajya Sabha. Nothing will come out of it, right? And you will just go back. Everyone will leave without having any sense of accomplishment or closure. So that is the reason people stop at creating an idea and voting and selecting that idea and saying that, okay, this is the hill that we will reach and we will accomplish in so many days or so many weeks. That is sort of the conclusion of the exercise in the design thinking workshop, if you will. Post that, people go and build the prototype, create the hill, test it out, and then come back if required. Come back, test it out, roll it out, and then come back. Right. So this is in a nutshell the process, right? So any questions?
No, sir. Thanks.
Okay, so let me try to let's log into Coursera and see what is available there.
Hello. Hi,
Yeah.
sir. I do have a question actually. So,
Sure.
what is the life cycle of this design thinking process? For example, new product is being launched, and definitely initially all the thoughts are being penned down, and then after that, whatever is the feasible solution is being taken into the kit. But after 3 months of the actual phase, the initial phase is done, and then they get to know that okay, this whatever solution was proposed is not a good approach because it might involve a lot of cost. It might involve there's a technical limitation over there, or there can be some other reason for that. So at that time, are the steps taken to rectify whatever was done initially, like whatever time and money has been spent initially on this design thinking process, and it was not uh, up to the mark. In that sense, what is the way to rectify it?
Correct. So the answer to that is to come back to the drawing board, evaluate what you have done. So there are variants that I will show you. If you just go to Google yourselves, or I will show, I'm going to share this screen here anyways. Let's do this. So what you will see is design thinking. The process that I showed you from Stanford is mapped out as a linear process. Correct? This is what I showed you. But there is inherently understood is a cycle like this. I hope you are able to see on the right side. So you empathize, define the problem, ideate, create a prototype, right? And test it, implement it, then of course go back. And after implementation, you will go back to the initial drawing board where you revisit the empathy map. So the empathy map, if you have implemented, if you have hopefully done the design thinking exercise correctly, um, it should bring out the pain points of the user or the persona. And in the ideation, you would have taken into account how to address those pain points, how to improve the thinking, feeling, and the action part of the persona for the persona. So when you create a prototype and test it, there should be some improvement from the original empathy map. So when you go back with the implementation, if you go back to the empathy map, you will find some improvements. But yes, you will find some lacuna as well. You will find some problems as well. Then you can go back and create the new empathy map and repeat this cycle. Now, can everything go horribly wrong? Yes, there are cases where maybe you do the exercise, design thinking exercise completely wrong. What are the critical factors for doing this well? You have a collection of people who are not only from one area or one trade within the company. So you don't only collect, let's say, customer support professionals. You also bring in business managers. You also bring in customers if possible. You also bring in financial people who manage finances. Because if you come up with an idea which says that let's go and buy this so and so expensive software, and the finance people are not in the room, he or she has not given his viewpoint, and then you are going to hit a bottleneck, right? So when we looked at the feasibility, when we looked at the chart where the feasibility of the idea was qualified by the group, it also includes some level of financial feasibility. So if you have a representation from finance there, he or she will give you a quick validation for how feasible something like that could be. Or if you say that we want to implement an ERP system which will take 2 years, a little good it is going to do to improve customer satisfaction in the next 2-3 months. And a design thinking exercise should never allow something which is that long, right? The whole focus is to come up with hills, not mountains, like I said, which means that should not come up with ideas and prioritize and select ideas that cannot be implemented in a 2 to 3 month time frame. So short cycles which are feasible, financially feasible, and realistic are to be chosen in this exercise. And then the exercise is done well. And of course, then you go back to the drawing board and repeat the cycle if required. Yeah. Okay, so let's see what courses are available. I'm just going to search. It's a bit slow in loading, but
Sir, out of the box question, like till when do we have access for Coursera? Like actually, I was also doing some courses from there, and probably it will take another 2 months. Like 3 more courses are there. So I was initially told that it is till September, but any idea on that? Like till when we have the
yeah,
extension?
I mean, they do extend once in a while. They do extend. I believe the access is still. I believe the access is till October. Let me try and find out. Uh, Remind me if I don't get back to you. Please drop me a note to
Sure,
get
sure.
back to all of you on the actual time frame. I'm trying to find the search thing here.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you, sir. Yeah.
Yeah. But there's the search for courses. Strange, I'm not able to find the search button in this. Okay, I'll figure it out. If you log in, you also should be able to find. Yeah, there's a chat. Someone's posted a message. Let me see. Okay, Ravi of great. Yes, design thinking for innovation. Can you all see this?
Yes, Professor.
Yeah. So even if you log in, you should be able to find that. How many of you actually have created an account?
I have.
sir.
I have.
I have.
Okay, great. So I think as many as possible you should do that. There are also not just courses, but there are also sort of complete certifications, right? And doing the course is of course free anytime, but the certification is free due to this partnership for a period of time. So even if you don't, Subhash, yes, you have a question?
No, sir. I just raised my hand to say I have an account.
Okay, great. Lab purchase certificate. Okay, so my to do is to find out how long this is free. The access certainly is there for anyone, but till when the access is free, certification is free. Here, somehow strangely now the search box is coming.
Yeah, so it would be great if you can extend a bit more, like not only this course, like apart from that, many other courses are there, which is
Yeah,
still.
absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely, yeah. Very strange.
Sir, I recently had received an email from Coursera saying that the partnership with the DSU is extended till September 30th or so.
Oh, okay, that's great.
Yeah.
That is great. Maybe you can share that email with everyone.
Yeah, sure.
I will also check, but and if I don't check, please do remind me. And if I don't get back to you. So what generally you would like to get a feel for what typically what courses are you folks doing?
Professor, I have taken an Excel course and also an economics course.
Okay.
I have done 4 certifications as of now. So Python with Rasa, and data science. So I'm doing many courses from him. Yeah.
Excellent.
I have also done one Excel specialization certificate. I've completed it, and on the managerial economics thing, I'm in the work in progress.
How many of you are working in manufacturing companies? Can you just do a quick show of hands?
I'm in Bosch.
Swan Bueller.
Maybe if you can just raise your hand quickly, all who are working in manufacturing. So for you folks, if you want, you can opt for the supply chain management specialization when you come to the 4th term, or also do courses here in Coursera as well in supply chain management. If you are interested in project management, you of course can. There are certifications here as well that you can do in Coursera. So, any other areas of interest? So I know data sciences, business analytics are of interest. Any other areas of interest in Coursera you folks have? Vidya, you said you were doing Agile, is that correct?
Yeah, Professor, I have done my Scrum. I have done certification from Scrum.org actually.
Okay.
So
Okay, great.
But I do try to see from Coursera also I've seen, and from my company also we are registered with Google Pluralsight. So in Pluralsight also I've done. But if there's something over here, you can let me know, Professor. I'll definitely.
Okay, so Scrum Master, you are doing, it's a software development company?
Yeah, Professor. I work for Fidelity.
Okay, Fidelity. Okay, great. So are you familiar, I mean, are you also familiar with CI/CD and GitHub, etc.? Or
Yeah. Basically, I am a senior tech lead and a Scrum Master. So I even program from my
okay,
side. So we do use Git and Jenkins.
Jenkins pipeline also.
Yeah, we are into DevOps actually now. Yeah.
DevOps,
So.
okay. So there may be DevOps courses here also as well, other DevOps courses.
Yeah, right. I try to explore, but I think Captain was telling that if you're doing anything with respect to management, that will come up in the certification of DSU. The other ones, I thought, okay, first after once I'm clearing what I have in my bucket list, I will go through. Yeah,
No,
but if there's
can you say that
something,
again?
yeah. So what Captain was saying is, if you're doing any technical certification, that would not be taken into account from the DSU side. It's only on the Coursera certification that you're going to get or something like that.
Yeah, so it will not be taken into account for, I believe, the exchange for assignment, right?
Okay, but that never came back. Actually, he was what Captain was saying is at the end he might add these courses into the certification. There is a final degree certification that we're getting.
Yes, correct.
So he was insisting on the management courses, but I did try to explore in Coursera as well. But if you have any suggestions, you can totally let me know, Professor.
Yeah, so one way to look at, of course, there are both aspects. One aspect is that you have the opportunity to pick up the certificate without having to pay for it right now till September end, right? So that you can use anyways, whether or not you are going to get credit for it or it's going to appear on your degree in the Anand Sagar.
Right.
The Coursera certificate itself also stands its own good value. And usually they make you pay for your certificate if it is not through a program like what we have a tie-up with them. So my thinking would be if you want to learn and if you want to do some certification, this is a good time to do it because you will get the certificate as well from Coursera, and we'll have to check with Captain in terms of how it's going to be accounted for in the system.
Okay, so currently I've also done some courses from Coursera.
Okay.
So, but all are MBA related only. I've not done anything apart from that. So, I thought, okay, I'll finish off some of the things like for the current one, Prime Minister also have taken some of the courses. So I thought I'll finish them and then I'll look at the other ones. But if something which is very good, if you have any recommendations, I would definitely be interested.
Yeah, see, my thought on that is that they have already federated the content in the sense that the people who govern what gets onto course. So it's not like a free blog, right? Anybody can write. So they have selected a set of universities or selected set of contributors to contribute to the courses in Coursera. So they've already done the selection process. I think if you pick from any university, Coursera, the courses which are here, I think that would be good. I mean that should be good enough. So UC Davis seems to have put up courses here in DevOps. Let's see what else is available. IBM has courses.
Yeah, IBM has, yeah.
Yeah. University of Chicago has. That's very nice. Software networking. I don't know if that's of interest to you.
So one question, for example, we have enrolled in some course and the validity gets over. In that case, what will happen? The course will be over in that sense?
No, so validity of what you're saying?
So for example, I have taken a course which is of 6 months right now, and I'm already in 4th month, and 2 months course is left, but the validity for the expiry date for the partnership of DSU with Coursera is over. In that case, will the course be still available for me, or it will be?
I doubt it actually. I doubt it. The thing is, it is not that you have to go through the calendar months, right? Meaning you can accelerate your learning.
Yeah, so already 8 months course I'm doing in 4 weeks, so I can't accelerate.
4 weeks, oh wow. Yeah, but I doubt if it will get extended.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't think it will happen.
Okay, sure.
Okay. Okay. So if there are sort of no other questions, thank you all. I know it's Sunday afternoon, not a great time to attend a class, but thank you for paying attention. Good questions. And if you need any further information about design thinking or innovation management, do let me know. Design thinking is a skill which is certainly worth picking up. It is in vogue right now. It's a skill. In Coursera, you look up design thinking courses, and I think you can get a certificate from there.
And Professor, you had a plan of actually having a 2-day session. You had even asked our names.
So I'm going to do that. Yeah. So we are going to do that. So the thing is that only catch with design thinking, to be really done very effectively is to do it in person. So when we initially were planning to do it, we thought that, okay, let's see if this COVID situation gets over. But I think we will, this is a discussion that we have been having in the last week or so with Captain in terms of doing it virtually. It's a little bit tricky because you have to put up those post-its, etc. Maybe we can come up with some other format and do it.
Professor, I have a suggestion if you are interested. Actually, I participate in a lot of Scrum certification.
Okay.
And lean change management I have attended. So I have attended some of them online as well. There's something called Trello board. Maybe you can explore on that.
Sure.
It is a live board where teams can share. And there are some more links. Maybe I can send you that. What I use for my teams also, because it's all now from home, right?
Yeah.
So you can replicate the real-time environment. You can replicate actually. If you're interested, I can share it.
Yes, please do share, because I think the ideal thing, so many times what happens in design thinking is what you saw as one board for, let's say, a persona. Usually there are 3 or 4 teams working on 3-4 whiteboards in parallel. In a real design thinking setup, maybe if there are 20-25 participants, they will form 5-6 teams, 3-4 teams, and they will take 4 whiteboards, and each team will conduct its own design thinking exercise, focusing on one problem, either on one problem on one persona. So that environment is something that I would like to replicate, where maybe 3-4 whiteboards. We have 3-4 whiteboards. I think
it's possible, Professor. You can do it on Zoom also. You can create the teams on Zoom. It's possible on Zoom, and there is Trello, and there is one more which I use. So I can show. I mean, I can. If you're interested, I can just walk you through that.
Sure.
Only thing is, the initial one might be free, but later you may need to pay if you're planning a certification course. You may need to look at the pricing options. But yeah, that's a very good one, which I like personally, because it gives you the live environment, like you're in person attending a class, or I mean a training.
Okay, great. So if you can share the links, we will certainly evaluate. I think Zoom also has some breakout room concept, right?
Yeah, right. So you can break out in the Zoom, and then you can use the Trello board, and there is one more. I'm not able to get the name at this point, but I can send you that, which I use actually.
Okay. Okay, sounds good. Thank you so much. So we will maybe connect later again if we decide to do this session virtually, which looks like will be the most likely mode. Then we will obviously send the links to everyone to join if you're interested. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Professor.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you, Professor.
Thank you.